Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man, and welcome to what I will call Mortal May, where I primarily talk about where I'll primarily be talking about the Mortal Kombat franchises and my ideas for what to do with the franchise if I were the IP holder. Admittedly, this is not my original idea. This is actually a concept that I've borrowed from another YouTuber called the Fourth Snake, who does a lot of a lot of gaming videos, primarily about Mortal Kombat. And yet, he still felt the need to have a specific month dedicated to the topic. I did ask him if I was if I was allowed to use that same name, that same hashtag, but he hasn't replied to me since because reasons. Not that it matters much. Uh, I'm gonna go with innocent until guilty here. Uh, so I'll just go over my suggestions for, as you can already see in front of you, how I would remake MK1. And by that I don't mean the 12th game of the Mortal Kombat franchise, which coincidentally is called MK1 or M1K, as I've seen some people mockingly refer to it. Rather, I am talking about the very first Mortal Kombat game, the one that came out in the same year I was, the one came out the same year I was born, when I was a few months old, or more specifically, because that movie is, or rather, that game is a little bit interesting from a very particular perspective. Namely, the fact that it is very much a product of, late Cold War cultural movements, which all coalesce into one very specific form. It has been commented on the fact that the movie is actually just a riff on Big Trouble in Little China, which I do see the point of. However, that first game has since expanded into a a huge franchise, which also spans a whole bunch of, which spans a whole bunch of other worlds with different population groups, and all of their respective influences, all coming to a head against each other in a variety of different ways. However, the primary background is still the one from the early '90s, one that was still forged within that, Cold War sphere of, and that Cold War and funnily enough, it is a response to that by basically rejecting it, by instead looking more into, the uh, martial arts action genre, and and describing a more individual story about honor and honesty and prowess and uh, all of that stuff that martial arts movies are typically about. And I want to see if I can I want to see if I can't take that particular premise but adapt it somehow in such a way as to make it either timeless or more appropriate to a modern setting. Now, admittedly, this might be a bad time to make a video such as this, because recently, as of the time of this video's production, the second trailer for Mortal Kombat 2 came out, which is due to be released in the near future of this video's release. So, and from all appearances so far, that movie will quite likely be good, unlike unlike the first Mortal Kombat, which kind of sent the whole IP spiraling for a while, to the point where it looked like it might not be salvageable anymore. If this second movie, Mortal Kombat movie, makes it salvageable, then I think it is. Then I think this video and maybe this entire video series, because yes, I am going to build an entire series over the course of this month. Hashtag Mortal May. Well then, well, in this series will become will become a little bit redundant. Still, I don't really care. I have my own ideas that I want to present, and I will say that I will primarily be focusing on the games because those are really the primary medium for which people interact with this for which people interact with this franchise, and it is the one that I most and I'm most keenly looking forward to getting right. And because I am a story guy, that is also what I will be looking at primarily, rather than any kind of movie adaptation. Now, anyway, with that disclaimer out of the way, it's time I go into how I would cover the game's story. And I think the most appropriate place to start is actually where the first game also takes place, within on the island where the first where the first within the French where the first Mortal Kombat tournament of the franchise actually takes place on Shang Tsung's island, and presided by Shang Tsung himself. And unlike and unlike other martial arts movies that focus on tournaments, where the tournament is actually just an excuse to have certain characters facing each other, I do instead want to go into a more instead want to go a little bit into exploring the actual structure of the tournament. And my idea for the actual structure of this tournament would be that there are four characters from Earthrealm and four characters from Outworld, or rather, there are four characters representing Earthrealm and four characters representing Outworld in the main bracket of the tournament. And those people will face each other off in a single elimination uh, contest, presided by Shang Tsung, who in this case represents Outworld, and as with the original lore of the game, this will be the 10th Mortal Kombat competition. The previous 9 will have been won by Outworld, and if Outworld wins this one, then they get to absorb or conquer Earthrealm, as per the rules of the broader franchise. And however, and therefore this is the must-win competition for the people of Earth, or Earthrealm as it's defined within the franchise. That being said, there are some different win conditions depending on whether depending on on whether the final name of on whether the winner of the main bracket represents either Outworld or Earthrealm. If an Outworlder wins it, then that's it. That's game over. If however a fighter from Earthrealm wins it, then after completing the main tournament, they then still have to go through another pair of fights. One against Shang Tsung himself, said Earthrealmer is able to get past Goro. Yes, I know that is not fair. That is very much the point. These are the bad guys. This is the bad guys rigging a tournament, which is because that is the point. That is why they are the bad guys. You may also notice that these are the MK9 designs. I chose them specifically because these are the designs that I think best fit my idea for what the tournament would be. Also, may I just say that Goro's arms kind of look bad in this in this particular render. Whatever. So anyway, we have our conditions, and we have our stakes set. So who would be in this tournament? Well, representing Earthrealm, we have four people. The first of whom is Raiden, the Thunder God, someone who notices that that the elder gods are being negligent in their duties, and decides to take them to task by basically entering into this a martial arts tournament. Though he does accept having a bind on his powers in order to do so. So he can't really go full on with his uh, with his Thunder God abilities there and just clean house. He has to play a little bit more strategically. He has to utilize his martial arts mastery more effectively. The second character representing Earthrealm is Liu Kang. Occasionally, he is referred to as a Shaolin monk. However, and indeed, he wasn't initially meant to be a Shaolin monk in the first game. But the actor who did the motion capture for Liu Kang refused to shave his head. So instead of being Shaolin, he is White Lotus, which I have to say also works because historically the White Lotus has been an anti-imperial resistance movement therefore opposed to all forms of all forms of oppression. To some extent, they could be, to some extent, Mao Zedong as a rise to power can be attributed to, the influence of the White Lotus, and I don't rule out that Mao Zedong or his successors within the Chinese Communist Party would have outlawed this organization, maybe even outright. However, I still think that some variant of the White Lotus would still exist within this within this fictional setting, because even though they aren't fighting, even though they aren't solely facing off against Earth-based imperial powers, they would potentially be facing more supernatural threats within this particular remake. And Liu Kang is basically there because he is their champion. He is the main he's the main voice for the people, so to speak. I mean, after all, he is wearing red, so why not? Why not lean it more into this kind of a uh, proletarian anti-imperialistic bent. Even if he is from the White Lotus, I would imagine that that the Lotus wouldn't always wear white, but they wouldn't always wear white. There might be some kind of white accessory to to Liu Kang's costume, but his primary color would have to be something else. Because again, keep in mind they are a secret society; they've been outlawed, so they don't really want to showcase themselves too much, at least within this new setting. Next up, we have Johnny Cage, and I have to say, of all the characters within the Mortal Kombat franchise, even though Johnny Cage is the one that has aged most gracefully over the past 15 or so years, he also happens to be the character who I think is most in need of a reimagining, because his backstory is that of basically being a martial arts action star, and also therefore being very haughty, very cocky, which admittedly is something that would have made sense within within that particular framing, but it is not necessarily an approach that I think could be carried over into when it comes to modern actors, like because modern martial arts movies aren't necessarily the blockbusters that they used to be, especially not in the West. So for that reason, he wouldn't really be this haughty diva that he is often portrayed as being. What I do see him instead being is a martial arts or fitness influencer, someone who does a lot of shorts based on martial arts, maybe even occasionally doing some comedy skits, maybe occasionally doing maybe often doing demonstrations. He would still be very much he would still very much be full of himself, and still very much lean into his desires and his inclinations to to make the most off of his to make the most off his image. But nevertheless, he does have very distinctive level of skill that would allow others to notice him, even if he has a less than stellar personality, so to speak. And finally, last but not least, when it comes to the people representing Earthrealm, we have Sonya Blade. Also, yeah, I already mentioned the fact that these renders are from MK9. So, and I do have to say that this particular render is the one that has aged potentially potentially the least gracefully, especially when you consider the fact that Sonya Blade is supposed to be special forces. Within this new iteration, I do still want her to be special forces, but not necessarily U.S. special forces. I instead want her to be part of the Australian Secret Intelligence Service. Some of you might be thinking, wait, why Australian? Well, Australia is still part of the Five Eyes program, which is an international espionage program, which also has the U.S., the U.K., Canada, and I think New Zealand as as part of them. They are a set of associations that gather intelligence, compare notes, work with each other, trying to coordinate against major threats. And I think making her Australian will make her come across as a little bit more sympathetic to a modern audience, which is less than favorably inclined towards U.S. imperialism at the current moment. But also, it makes a little bit more sense when you consider her main rivalry within this franchise. And speaking of her main rivalry within this franchise, we open up the list of representatives of Outworld with Kano. Kano, who in Mortal Kombat more broadly is the leader of the Black Dragon Syndicate, and they are basically both gun runners and and hired goons for for whoever has any ill intentions towards towards anyone else. They do potentially pack a price because they do offer a very specific set of services, and I assume they offer them well enough to become notorious and to be targeted by by someone like by someone akin to a special forces organization. Why would he join Outworld in this in this particular situation? Well, I imagine it's because Outworld's triumph would mean more wars, and more wars would mean more business for him and for his syndicate. So of course he would want to stuff his pockets, as well as prove to himself and maybe to powerful allies surrounding him that he is this legit badass, even on a broader scale than he initially assumed. One that covers not just Earth, but several other worlds as well. Next up on the list of Outworld characters, we have Scorpion, aka Hanzo Hasashi, and this iteration of Scorpion is very much is very much undead, and therefore the Wraith, and therefore has his very supernatural abilities like the teleporter or maybe even the ability to spit fire, toasty, that kind of thing. And his backstory would basically be the same. He allowed himself to become to become that much harder to kill and quite a bit more powerful in order to gain revenge for his on behalf of his murdered family, a family he considers to be murdered by by the hands of someone else representing Outworld, Sub-Zero, more specifically Bihan Sub-Zero, aka the first one, who was more of a prick, and therefore he's someone who could believably do something like this. In the in the original lore of Mortal Kombat, the various the Lin Kuei, which Sub-Zero is a part of, and the Shirai Ryu, which Scorpion is a part of, have been historical rivals. perhaps also accentuated by the fact that one of these organizations is Chinese and the other Japanese. So they could have a rivalry spanning potentially centuries. One that could, to some extent, still plausibly be enforced, even if it is possible that both China and Japan would have outlawed them or tried to exterminate them outright. With these new figures potentially being part of a uh, rebirth or relaunch of these respective organizations, and and it is within that sense that I would argue it could be seen to make sense for why for why such an attack on on the family of a Shirai Ryu member would be carried out, because it makes sure that the Shirai Ryu no longer has any continuity. That is something the Lin Kuei could insist, and in fact I imagine that the Lin Kuei themselves could potentially have different different divisions, so to speak, specializing on each division specializing on a different kind of magic. In which case, it would be possible for this new iteration to have both Sub-Zero and Scorpion as part of the Shirai Ryu, as part of rival sub-factions. Would that rivalry become ugly enough to where they would want to target each other's families? I don't know. Maybe. But it would explain how there are various members of the Lin Kuei who have wildly different abilities. Because yes, not all Lin Kuei members have have Sub-Zero's cryomancy. That is just something to consider. Maybe maybe other characters have maybe other characters are part of different warrior clans or warrior secret societies. Which would explain why they have why they would have different abilities. Um, Especially when considered the fact that they're both kind of like ninjas, or they're supposed to be ninjas, even though they had a huge and very distinctive uh, uh, you know piece of color garb that makes them very easily identifiable and therefore not ninjas. But it is still but it is still something I have to I have given at least some measure of thought to. It is, and really looking back at how Mortal Kombat historically has dealt with the ninjas, it really they really weren't part of an official organization. They just happened to dress similarly, like an example of convergent evolution in terms of style choices, in terms of what each population found to be most practical, both in order to move around comfortably enough to fight and in order to distinguish themselves. Whether that would still be the case in this time, I don't really know. Some of you might have already noticed something, namely the fact that the 7 characters I've presented so far are the original seven who are part of the who are part of the or who were the roster of the original Mortal Kombat game, which means that the 8th character and the final representative of Outworld would have to be someone from a future game, someone who hasn't someone who wasn't someone who obviously wasn't in that game, and who to some extent maybe sets the tone for what Outworld would actually be like. And for that role I have chosen Baraka. Yeah, he's an ugly mofo. And also he has an ugly mofo, and he has a very specific somewhat daunting look, but one that still ends up being nevertheless quite approachable. And I think having a character with his specific appearance and his specific characteristics, so to speak, will immediately make it clear that this is that this is very high stakes, and that this is not something, and that what the characters assumed about their world is in fact is in fact not the case, and that they are really stepping up in a different at a different level of competition, at a different level of stakes, that and they really have to step up their game, so to speak. So for that reason, I think Baraka is very good. Is very good in that end. To that end. Now, as for the tournament itself, I do have an idea for the tournament planned out, but I really won't go over it just now. There are, however, three things that I want to talk about that absolutely have to happen within the Mortal Kombat tournament. First of all, Sonya has to defeat Kano. Like that is them, that is them hashing out their particular feud, bringing it to an end. With Sonya, Sonya potentially bringing in Kano in order to, um, with Sonya potentially bringing in Kano in order to have him answer to the law, because that could be the kind of character she is. She's principled to the extent that she's principled enough to the extent where she thinks that is the best thing that she could do to him. The second thing that needs to happen is Sub-Zero and Scorpion, who are barely visible in this somewhat poor render, need to have one fight against each other, and that fight will end somewhat brutally with Scorpion killing Sub-Zero, as the canon. And I imagine Sub-Zero actually being the only fatality of this tournament. Somewhat ironically, even though it's called Mortal Kombat, only one character dies. Still, it does live up to its deadly reputation because one character did die. And the third thing that needs to happen is Liu Kang wins. Like, yeah, he is the hero of this franchise. He very much has to be the guy who manages to not only win the main bracket, but then also goes against Goro and Shang Tsung, and is able to break the outworld streak and keep our film safe for the next at least 50 years. Like that is seriously I think would make him more more interesting to follow, and I think that would make for the most satisfying narrative as well. As for gameplay, well, there will be a main story mode, obviously. I imagine there potentially also being an arcade mode, some ladder modes. That could be the same thing. There could be some kind of endurance or survival mode, maybe even tag teams, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's basically how I imagine this this particular franchise developing. Some of you might think that is still that is still quite small, given that I at most have like 10 characters, and modern fighting games typically have at least 24. And to that I say, well, modern fighting games kind of struggle under their own weight in a wide variety of ways. So having one that is scaled down is a little bit better. Will be a little bit more, perhaps, newcomer friendly, so to speak. And and it serves as a good and simple and clean, simple introduction for the broader franchise, because you're not just looking at getting your money's worth. And with getting your money's worth, a lot of people often assume that you need to go as big as possible. But that unfortunately leads to a lot of crunch time and a lot of and a lot of shortcuts when it comes to quality. I'd rather people get their money's worth from from something simpler, something cheaper, but that is nevertheless still quite high quality. Alternatively, it could serve as it would serve as a pretty good prologue for the rest of the franchise, but I'll get to that soon enough. Until then, I would like to say Thank you for your attention. If you if you've enjoyed my if you enjoyed my video and the thoughts I've given to this to this presentation or revamping or relaunch, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the premise of the video itself or to any particular facet of how I wish to get it done, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I talk about books and the print medium more broadly. So if that's because I am a story guy, I'm a story guy primarily because I'm an author myself. So if you want to see my thoughts on that particular medium, you can check the link out in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. If, however, you find yourself less interested in my, in my thoughts on a print medium or on, or on the writing medium more broadly, then I suggest you stay on this channel where you can find out my opinions on a whole variety of other media, video games, cinema, television, really really everything and anything I can think of. And I also occasionally touch upon other topics as well. So if you go through the backlog of this channel, it is quite likely you'll find something that draws your curiosity. If, however, you don't find yourself curious enough to where you would want to seek it out, well then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it for me. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.